It's been an incredibly difficult season for the Raptors, but it's seemingly going to be a much better year next year when Brandon Ingram does join the team. So, what does the fit really look like for Ingram when he gets involved with Barrett, Barnes, Quickley, and more? We'll break it down in today's video. Let's get into it. Welcome back, everybody. This is Amateur Sports, the YouTube channel dedicated to Toronto Raptors content in videos and live streams. Drop a like if you enjoyed this video along the way, and subscribe to the channel for more Raptors content like this for the rest of this regular season and beyond. And hopefully that beyond looks a lot better than it does this season. We're in the midst of a tank. The Raptors are at the point of their tank where they have to sit out Jared Rhoden of games. They literally had to send Jared Rhoden, a two-way player, down to the G League because they needed to make their team even worse. Kind of a complicated scenario, but there's a lot of negativity going around the team and a lot of negativity going around on this channel from myself because just a lot of negative stuff happening right now. The Raptors are trying to lose games, and they can't lose enough games right now to solidify the best draft position that they can get. So I decided to just flip the switch, change the subject, go forward-looking to next season where I think things are going to be a lot better for the Raptors and take a positive spin on things for the first time in a while. So we're going to be discussing Brandon Ingram joining the team and what that's going to look like. We've done similar for that in the past. And a couple weeks ago, I did a video talking about RJ Barrett, how I felt like, looking at a starting five of Quickley, Barrett, Barnes, Ingram, Pirtle, in theory, it's a good five, but it's lacking defense and it's lacking spacing. And the easiest player to remove from that five to make a trade and to strengthen the weaknesses, spacing and defense, is to trade RJ Barrett. But what happens if the Raptors can't trade RJ Barrett? Because the reality is, RJ Barrett's still young, 24 years old, still potentially, likely, improving, and still on a pretty good contract. One that's not crippling the Raptors in any way whatsoever, one that's certainly tradable. But what if the Raptors decide they want to have a prolonged look at RJ Barrett? Or what if they just figure there's no good trade out there for him? Because I've talked about trading him, but I also haven't quite been able to come up with exactly what the trade is going to look like. Are you taking a cut price deal just to get off RJ Barrett? No. I think that the Raptors should be looking to trade RJ Barrett. I'm going to stand by that statement, even though people may disagree. Again, it's just a fit. It's a little bit clunky there to have him involved as well. But I don't want the Raptors to get rid of him for the sake of it. If it's a good trade, do it. But I haven't been able to come up with what that good trade is. So I'm thinking the most likely scenario at this point is that RJ Barrett is with the team to start next season. And I haven't discussed at all what the team needs to look like with Brandon Ingram injected into it, with RJ Barrett still remaining with the team. So that's what we're going to do in this video here. So as I said, that's the starting five. Immanuel Quickley is the point guard, and he's a guy that has to stay here. The reason Immanuel Quickley has got to stay here is because I think his playmaking is improving, and we've really seen now, like I said it a couple weeks ago when I did a video talking about Barrett getting traded, the reason you got to keep Quickley is that's the floor spacer that you need. He's a decent defender in space, covering passing lanes and off-ball stuff. He's okay on ball, but I think he's a little bit better off-ball for what Immanuel Quickley brings. But the spacing is something that you need. And when we see a consistent runway of games where he's healthy, I think he's going to step his game up. And he certainly has in the last couple of weeks when we've seen him a lot more healthier. Now, coming at a bad time when the Raptors are trying to lose games, but hey, we're seeing better stuff from Immanuel Quickley lately. We're seeing good stuff from Immanuel Quickley lately. Enough to make me confident to go with him again as the point guard for next season. Conversations about his contract, sure. Is it a little too much? We'll see down the line. But it is a flat salary that isn't going to increase over time. So I don't think it will look as bad as the years goes on. And as he stays hopefully healthy and plays well. We need that shooting. He's a big part of the system here. And I think more shooting, more pull-up threes. I asked for that to start this season. I want to see that next season as well. RJ Barrett, kind of your shooting guard. I don't really want to pay attention too much to positions here. You've got your point guard, you've got your center in Jakob Poeltl, and then you've got, the guys on the wings, RJ Barrett, Brandon Ingram, Scotty Barnes. So where Brandon Ingram fits into this and why I think he's going to be so important, why I've, put the term savior in the thumb of this one, is that the Raptors really have needed saving in some spots this season, especially in clutch scenarios when the defense gets constricted, it gets locked in late fourth quarter scenarios. We need somebody that's going to pick apart these tough defenses, somebody that's going to pick apart some zone defenses. And I think the player that is going to be able to do that is Brandon Ingram. They've just lacked that scoring punch, that guy who's going to get this team a bucket in so many scenarios this season. Earlier in the season when they're actually trying to win games, They were just missing this type of player. And I'm very, very excited to see what that sort of player is going to look like for the team. Because even though RJ Barrett is pretty good at getting his shot, he relies very heavily at getting to the rim. And if there was a correlation when the Raptors were playing against a team that had good rim protection, good interior defense, they'd struggle. And they'd struggle to score. Barrett wouldn't be able to get his. Scottie Barnes wouldn't be able to get his. And it sort of turned into the Raptors relying heavily on Barnes to be shooting those shots in mid-range. Well, now instead of Barnes doing it, we're going to have Brandon Ingram doing it. And we're going to be able to have Scottie Barnes doing stuff he's better at on the offensive end of the floor in a bit more of a creation role, do-it-all type of role. I think Barnes is so terrific at cutting to the rim, and I think he will benefit off of Brandon Ingram's gravity. Not like three-point shooting gravity, spacing gravity, but just people worried about him in mid-range could leave some openings for Scottie Barnes as a cutter. The same could be said for RJ Barrett, but the reality is the priority of the offensive set, the priority of the ball in people's hands, it's going to be falling on Brandon Ingram. Barnes is probably still going to be like the guy they're constructing around, but the main scorer on offense, it's got to be Brandon Ingram. Barnes does to take some huge reins on offense as well. Like I said, you need that floor spacing punch that Immanuel Quickley has. You need the pull-up threat that he has, so he's involved. Pirtle as a screen setter is creating space like that. He's at the rim wreaking havoc as well. He's a fantastic player, but it just leaves an awkward spot there for RJ Barrett, where all of a sudden now he's going to have to adopt to a more off-ball role. And I'm interested to see if he can build his game from that role, because his role has shifted quite dramatically in his time with the Raptors since he arrived from the New York Knicks. He's become more efficient. He's become a more reliable three-point shooter. He's become a more reliable playmaker. So all these extra skills that RJ Barrett has developed, can we still see him go even further? Can we see him become a better three-point shooter, an even better three-point shooter? Can we see him become a better defender? Because if we're at the point where RJ Barrett is happy here, he's not on a huge contract right now, there's 2 more years left on his current deal, if he becomes a better three-point shooter, and there's going to be more space potentially with the caliber of players the Raptors are going to have for next season, if he can become a better defender, and he's got the size, he's got the speed to be able to do it, maybe the player we've needed is RJ Barrett all along. I'll believe it when I see it. I'm not quite there yet, but I am interested to see what RJ Barrett looks like in this role where he's a lot more off-ball. Can it still be successful? Is the space too constricted on the inside? That's my concern. That's what I think is eventually going to happen. I look back on the teams with Pascal Siakam. Raptors have struggled with floor spacing for so long. And the three-point shooting threat was larger on some of those teams with OG Anunoby and Fred VanVleet. And Siakam was just so surgical. He has such a deep bag and to be able to get to the rim and get his own shots. That's kind of what made things work for certain periods of times with that team. But for this current team, like that era faded away for the Raptors. This current era for the Raptors, is it going to be able to work, or are we going to get back into this frustrating state where the paint is just constricted? You've got a player as good as Siakam is, who's now a 3-time All-Star, 2-time All-NBA, might make All-NBA again this season, and he just had no space to play, but still just by being so good was able to get some. Well, are we going to run into that issue again with the likes of Barnes and Ingram with this team? Because they're the primary guys to feed. RJ Barrett's got to become a little bit more of a passenger. It can't be this everyone's got the same share of the offense. We saw that with Darko's first half season with the Raptors when it was a good team that should have been a playoff team. It had Anunoby, it had Siakam, it had Barnes. There were clearly some guys on that team who needed the ball more often than others, but Scottie Barnes and Dennis Schroeder were basically sharing the same amount of shots, the same type of usage. There should be a hierarchy to these things. And it didn't work when there wasn't originally with the Raptors. So there should be next season. It's about constructing that hierarchy and piecing in the roles around that. And RJ Barrett's the guy that's going to have to be malleable in this position. So I don't know what RJ Barrett's headspace is at. If you recognize this, he seems to have recognized different roles and what he has to do to help the team win so far with the Raptors. And I commend him greatly for that. I'm not convinced it's going to work, but we're certainly going to see if it can work. And the fit right now will have to be Brandon Ingram kind of bailing the Raptors out in the scoring. He's got to have a lot of the ball. It's going to be Barnes focusing more on what he does best, maybe more cuts to the rim, maybe more off-ball stuff, a lot of playmaking stuff as well. To take a little bit of that playmaking load off of Immanuel Quickley, because we know that's not his specialty. You need the pull-up threat from Quickley. You still need that playmaking from Quickley. Is Barrett going to be able to transition his game a bit more off-ball, maybe a bit more three-point shooting, maybe a better defender? We will see. But the fit right now, I'm not sure about, but I think at this point, we'll probably get to see what it looks like before anything drastic does happen. And regardless of Barrett here or not, I think the Raptors will and definitely should be a playoff team for next season. Because like I said in the last video, if they are not a playoff team, something has gone incredibly wrong.